Why do some men chase married women, even when they know it's wrong? Society calls it a taboo, Freud might call it an Oedipus complex, but Carl Jung saw something deeper. This isn't just about lust or rebellion, it's about the hidden parts of the male psyche most men never confront. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, believed our deepest desires aren't random, they're clues to our unconscious mind. Through concepts like the collective unconscious, archetypes, and the anima, the inner feminine image every man carries, Jung revealed how attraction is rarely just about the person in front of us. So when a man is fixated on a married woman, Jung would argue it's not really her he wants, it's what she represents. Maybe she embodies his unrealized ideal of love, or perhaps she's a mirror for his own fear of commitment. Either way, the answer lies in psychology, not morality. By the end of this video, you'll understand the real reason behind this attraction and what it says about the modern male mind. The allure of the forbidden is a tale as old as time. From ancient myths to modern affairs, there's something undeniably magnetic about what we're told we can't have. Society's taboos don't just discourage certain desires, they often amplify them, turning ordinary attraction into an irresistible compulsion. This is the forbidden fruit effect in full force. The more something is deemed off-limits, the more it beckons. When a woman is married, she exists just beyond reach, wrapped in an invisible barrier of social and moral consequences. That barrier doesn't deter, it entices. For some men, the thrill isn't just in the chase, but in the defiance itself. It's as if the very act of wanting what's forbidden becomes a subconscious rebellion against the constraints of convention, a way to assert individuality in the face of societal expectations. But Jung would argue this isn't just about rebellion or thrill-seeking, it's about the shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is the part of the psyche that houses everything we deny or suppress, our hidden impulses, our socially unacceptable urges, the parts of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge. When a man is drawn to a married woman, he may not even realize that what he's really chasing is a reflection of his own repressed desires. Perhaps he craves the stability she represents, yet fears it on a conscious level. Or maybe he's drawn to the emotional complexity of a relationship that can never fully be his, mirroring his own unresolved conflicts about intimacy. The forbidden becomes a canvas onto which he projects his own unconscious longings he might not be ready to face directly. This dynamic reveals a paradox. The more we try to suppress or moralize certain desires, the more power we give them. The shadow doesn't disappear when ignored, it seeps out in disguised forms. A man who prides himself on being ethical and controlled might find himself inexplicably fixated on someone unavailable precisely because his conscious mind refuses to entertain those desires in any other context. The married woman, in this sense, becomes a safe outlet, a way to explore attraction without fully confronting what it means about him. After all, if the relationship can never truly happen, it remains in the realm of fantasy, where it's easier to avoid accountability. Jung's insight here is crucial. The shadow isn't something to be condemned or eradicated, but understood. The attraction to what's forbidden isn't just a moral failing, it's a psychological signal. It points to unmet needs, unexplored fears, or even a longing for something transcendent, something that transcends the ordinary boundaries of relationships. Until a man brings these shadow elements into the light of awareness, they'll continue to dictate his desires in ways he may not fully comprehend. The married woman isn't the problem, she's the mirror. And what he sees in that reflection might just be the key to understanding himself. At the heart of Jung's theory of the anima lies a profound truth about male psychology. Every man carries within him an unconscious image of the feminine, shaped not just by personal experience but by the collective archetypes of womanhood passed down through generations. This inner feminine counterpart, the anima, acts as a bridge between a man's conscious mind and the deeper, often inaccessible layers of his psyche. It influences not only how he relates to women but also how he understands emotions, intimacy, and even creativity. When a man falls in love, he is never merely responding to the woman before him. He is also encountering the projection of his anima, the embodiment of qualities he associates with the feminine ideal. This is why attraction can feel so primal, so fated. It's as if he recognizes something in her that resonates with an image buried deep within his own soul. Married women, in particular, often become powerful vessels for these projections. There is something about their unavailability that seems to heighten their allure, transforming them into symbols of a perfected anima. Unlike single women, who exist within the realm of possibility, a married woman is already claimed, already complete in a way that mirrors the anima's elusive nature. She carries an aura of emotional maturity, stability, and nurturing warmth, qualities that many men unconsciously associate with the feminine ideal precisely because they feel absent within themselves. A man who struggles with vulnerability, for instance, might be drawn to a married woman's perceived emotional depth, not realizing that what he admires in her is actually the disowned softness within himself. Her marriage becomes part of the fantasy, proof that she is capable of commitment, of being a wife, and thus a reflection of his own yearning for wholeness. Yet this projection is a double-edged sword, for it has little to do with the real woman behind the fantasy. The married woman who exists in a man's mind is often an illusion, a composite of his unmet needs and cultural ideals rather than an actual person with flaws, complexities, and agency. He may attribute to her near-mythical levels of patience, wisdom, or sensuality, none of which she can realistically uphold. This is the cruel irony of anima projection. The more a man idealizes an unavailable woman, the less he is able to see her, or himself, clearly. The fantasy shields him from the messiness of real relationships, where love requires negotiation, compromise, and the acceptance of imperfection. In fixating on a married woman, he avoids confronting the limitations of his own anima image, preserving it as something eternally out of reach, eternally perfect. The consequences of this dynamic are profound. When a man's attraction is rooted in projection rather than reality, he sets himself up for disillusionment. The married woman, once placed on a pedestal, will inevitably fail to live up to the impossible standard he has assigned her. Worse still, he may neglect genuine opportunities for connection with available partners, dismissing them as not measuring up to his internal ideal. Jung's work suggests that the only way out of this cycle is through integration, bringing the anima into conscious awareness so that it no longer operates as a hidden force dictating desires. This means recognizing that the qualities he admires in a married woman are, in fact, aspects of himself waiting to be acknowledged and developed. Emotional stability, nurturing warmth, depth of feeling, these are not traits exclusive to women, nor are they the sole responsibility of a partner to provide. They are human capacities, and the more a man cultivates them within himself, the less he will seek their reflection in impossible places. Ultimately, the anima projection reveals a universal truth about desire. We are often drawn not to others, but to the lost parts of ourselves. A married woman becomes irresistible not because she is uniquely extraordinary, but because she symbolizes what a man has yet to face within his own psyche. Until he does, he will continue to chase the illusion, mistaking the mirror for the prize. From an evolutionary standpoint, the male drive to compete for mates is hardwired into our biology. Across cultures and centuries, men have vied for status, resources, and social dominance, not just for survival, but to prove themselves as desirable partners. This primal impulse doesn't vanish in modern relationships, it merely adapts. When a woman is already committed to someone else, she becomes the ultimate prize, a living test of a man's ability to outperform his rivals. Her unavailability signals that she has already been chosen, which paradoxically heightens her perceived value. In the subconscious calculus of attraction, a partnered woman carries an implicit seal of approval, proof that another man has deemed her worthy of commitment. For some men, this triggers a deep-seated urge to compete, to demonstrate that they, too, are worthy, or perhaps even more so. The challenge isn't just about winning her affection, it's about proving superiority, not just to her, but to themselves. Jung's concept of the hero archetype adds another layer to this dynamic. The hero is a universal figure who ventures into the unknown, faces trials, and emerges victorious, often with a prize that symbolizes wholeness or transcendence. In the context of romantic pursuit, a man drawn to a married woman may unconsciously cast himself in this heroic role. He isn't just a suitor, he's a challenger, a rebel, or even a savior. The narrative he constructs might cast her current partner as inadequate, the villain, who doesn't appreciate her, the complacent figure who lacks the hero's passion or depth. By positioning himself as the one who truly sees her, who could love her better, he transforms a taboo attraction into a quest. This isn't mere ego, it's a mythic script playing out in real time, one that allows him to frame his desire as something noble rather than selfish. Yet this heroic self-mythology obscures a darker truth. The competition is often illusory. The married woman isn't a trophy to be won, and her existing relationship isn't a trial designed for the suitor's personal growth. The hero narrative conveniently sidesteps the real-world consequences of this pursuit, the potential for hurt, betrayal, and emotional fallout. It also ignores the woman's autonomy, reducing her to a symbol rather than a full participant in the story. The more a man invests in this fantasy, the harder it becomes to see the reality, that his drive to win may have little to do with genuine connection and everything to do with proving something to himself, about his worth, his masculinity, or his ability to conquer. The intersection of evolutionary impulses and archetypal patterns creates a potent psychological cocktail. On one level, the competitive urge is biological, a remnant of a time when securing a mate was tied directly to survival. On another, it's symbolic, a replay of ancient stories in which men prove their worth through feats of devotion or daring. But in the modern world, where relationships are, theoretically, built on mutual choice rather than conquest, these drives become distorted. A man who fixates on winning a married woman may find himself trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction, because the thrill lies in the chase, not the catch. Even if he succeeds in swaying her affections, the reality of a relationship forged in secrecy or betrayal rarely lives up to the mythic struggle that preceded it. Breaking free from this pattern requires recognizing the difference between healthy attraction and the compulsion to compete. Evolutionary impulses and archetypal stories aren't mandates, they're influences, and understanding them allows for conscious choice. A man who examines his own motivations might discover that his attraction to unavailable women isn't about love at all, but about filling a void in his own sense of self, whether it's a need for validation, a fear of true intimacy, or an unprocessed wound around rejection. The real hero's journey, in Jungian terms, isn't about claiming a prize, but about returning to oneself with greater awareness. The challenge isn't to conquer, but to outgrow the need to conquer at all. The pursuit of a married woman often conceals a painful paradox. She feels irresistibly desirable precisely because she is ultimately unobtainable. On the surface, this seems counterintuitive. Why would someone chase what they can never truly have? But from a psychological perspective, her unavailability serves as a protective barrier, allowing a man to experience the thrill of attraction without the risk of genuine emotional exposure. A married woman is, in many ways, the safest object of desire because the relationship can never progress to true intimacy. There are built-in limits. secrecy, guilt, the looming presence of her existing commitment, that prevent things from becoming too real, too demanding. For a man with unconscious fears of vulnerability, this arrangement is perfect. He gets to play at love without ever having to face the terrifying prospect of being fully seen, chosen, or relied upon. Jung's concept of the shadow helps explain why this dynamic is so compelling. The shadow represents all the parts of ourselves we deny or reject, our weaknesses, insecurities, and unresolved wounds. For many men, the fear of true intimacy is buried deep in the shadow, masked by bravado or a string of superficial conquests. The pursuit of an unavailable woman becomes the perfect distraction, a way to keep the spotlight on the chase rather than the emptiness that might be revealed in a real, reciprocal relationship. By fixating on someone who can never fully reciprocate his feelings, a man avoids confronting his own capacity for emotional risk. The irony is that he may see himself as the bold pursuer, the romantic willing to defy convention, when in truth he is fleeing from something far more daunting, the possibility of being loved back. This pattern reveals itself in subtle ways. A man might convince himself that his feelings for a married woman are deeper and more profound than anything he's experienced before, but this intensity is often a smokescreen. True emotional intimacy develops slowly through shared vulnerability and everyday acts of trust. The forbidden nature of an affair, by contrast, offers a shortcut to intensity. Stolen moments feel electric precisely because they exist outside the mundane realities of long-term partnership. The shadow thrives in these extremes, using drama to avoid the harder, quieter work of building something real. In Jungian terms, until a man brings this fear into the light of awareness, he will continue to confuse the adrenaline of pursuit with the substance of love. The married woman, then, becomes a mirror for everything he refuses to acknowledge about himself. Her unavailability reflects his own emotional guardedness. Her divided loyalties echo his ambivalence about commitment. Even the pain of longing for her serves a purpose. It's easier to suffer for a fantasy than to face the more ordinary and often more frightening challenges of a real relationship, negotiating needs, weathering conflicts, showing up day after day. The shadow convinces him that the problem lies outside himself, in the circumstances that keep them apart, rather than in his own resistance to true connection. Healing this pattern requires shadow work, the deliberate, often uncomfortable process of bringing unconscious fears into conscious awareness. A man must ask himself difficult questions. Why does unavailability excite him more than availability? What is he truly afraid of in a reciprocal relationship? Does he believe on some level that he is unworthy of love unless it's earned through struggle? These realizations can be painful, but they are also liberating. Once he sees how his pursuit of the unattainable serves as a defense mechanism, he can begin to dismantle it. The goal isn't to condemn his desires, but to understand them, to recognize that the married woman he idealizes is not the solution to his loneliness, but a signpost pointing toward the work he still needs to do within himself. In the end, the fear of intimacy is often a fear of facing one's own humanity, flawed, vulnerable, and desperately in need of connection. A married woman's unavailability offers the illusion of love without the risk, but real fulfillment lies in the opposite direction, in daring to want something that wants you back. Jung's wisdom reminds us that we cannot outrun our shadows. We can only bring them into the light. The most courageous pursuit isn't of someone else's partner, but of the self-awareness that makes genuine intimacy possible. Our collective fascination with forbidden love isn't born in a vacuum. It's carefully cultivated by the stories we consume. From classic literature to blockbuster films, the trope of the other man winning over a married woman has been romanticized for centuries. Think of iconic narratives like The English Patient, The Bridges of Madison County, or Mad Men, stories where stolen moments are painted with a brush of tragic beauty, where passion is measured by its very impossibility. These narratives don't just reflect desire, they shape it, teaching us to equate intensity with legitimacy, secrecy with depth. When a man finds himself drawn to a married woman, he's not just responding to her, he's subconsciously reenacting a script written long before he was born, one that promises transcendence through transgression. The media's glamorization of these affairs rarely shows the aftermath, the eroded trust, the collateral damage, the hollowness that often follows when fantasy crashes into reality. Instead, it lingers on the crescendo, leaving audiences with the intoxicating idea that love, if it's real, must defy rules. But modern culture has added new layers to this old story. Social media and digital connectivity have blurred the boundaries of relationships in unprecedented ways. A man can now orbit a married woman's life through curated Instagram posts or late-night text exchanges, maintaining a connection that feels intimate yet requires no real accountability. The digital realm thrives on ambiguity, heart emojis, nostalgic song shares, inside jokes that live in the liminal space between friendship and something more. These interactions feed the fantasy while skirting the weight of actual commitment, creating a playground for projection. A harmless comment on a post can be overanalyzed for hidden meaning. A glance held a second too long over drinks becomes proof of a connection that exists largely in his mind. Technology hasn't invented these behaviors, but it has amplified them, providing endless fuel for the imagination while obscuring the line between what's real and what's imagined. Meanwhile, shifting relationship norms have further complicated the landscape. As conversations about polyamory, emotional affairs, and conscious uncoupling enter the mainstream, traditional boundaries feel more negotiable than ever. For some men, this cultural fluidity becomes license to rationalize their attraction to married women, framing it as progressive, love shouldn't be confined by labels, or inevitable, chemistry can't be controlled. Yet beneath these modern justifications often lurks the same old avoidance of emotional labor. It's easier to philosophize about free love than to do the work of building a secure attachment with an available partner. The irony is that our era, which prizes authenticity and communication, has also given rise to new ways of avoiding both. A man can now cloak his pursuit of the unattainable in the language of enlightenment, all while dodging the vulnerability that genuine intimacy demands. These societal forces converge to create a perfect storm. The media romanticizes the forbidden, technology facilitates the ambiguous, and evolving norms provide cover for the unresolved. The result is a culture where fantasy is constantly nurtured, where a man can spend years orbiting a married woman, convincing himself that their almost relationship is more profound than any ordinary partnership. What gets lost in this delusion is the truth that real connection isn't found in the shadows of secrecy, but in the daylight of mutual choice. Until we challenge the stories that equate love with suffering or conquest, these patterns will persist, not because they fulfill us, but because we've been taught to mistake longing for meaning. The antidote isn't condemnation, but clarity, recognizing that the most rebellious love story isn't the one that breaks rules, but the one brave enough to build something that lasts. The path to breaking this cycle begins with a fundamental shift, from projection to self-awareness. Jung's framework offers not just an explanation, but a way out, the integration of the anima and shadow. This isn't about suppressing desires or shaming oneself for attraction, but about recognizing that the intensity directed toward an unavailable woman is actually misplaced energy that belongs to your own unlived potential. When a man projects his anima onto a married woman, he disowns the very qualities he admires in her: emotional depth, nurturing warmth, the capacity for intimacy. The work lies in reclaiming those fragments of himself. Shadow work starts with uncomfortable questions. What does this forbidden attraction reveal about what I've denied in myself? Am I chasing a feeling rather than a person? The answers aren't found in judgment, but in curiosity. Each moment of obsession or fantasy becomes a clue pointing toward parts of the psyche waiting to be acknowledged and embraced. This integration naturally leads to a different approach to relationships, one built on presence rather than fantasy. Healthy connection requires two available people choosing each other in daylight, without hidden agendas or unspoken limitations. It demands the courage to say, "I want someone who wants me back," and mean it, to value reciprocity over the adrenaline of pursuit. This shift often feels anticlimactic at first. After years of equating love with longing, straightforward affection can seem mundane. But therein lies the revelation. Real intimacy isn't found in grand gestures or secret trysts, but in the quiet accumulation of trust, the safety to be imperfect, the daily choice to show up. A man who stops outsourcing his anima to unavailable women discovers something radical, that the qualities he sought in them were always within his capacity to cultivate and share. The final and perhaps most liberating realization is this: the married woman was never the true object of desire. She was a mirror, reflecting back the disowned pieces of a man's own psyche, his unmet needs, his unexplored softness, his fear of being truly known. The real allure wasn't her, it was the unfinished business within himself. This understanding doesn't diminish past attractions, but contextualizes them as stepping stones toward wholeness. In Jung's words, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Breaking the pattern isn't about willpower. It's about waking up to the truth that every forbidden longing was always, at its core, a misplaced yearning for self-reclamation. The most profound relationship you'll ever have is with the parts of yourself you've been running from, and that's the one affair worth pursuing without restraint. So what do you think? Does Jung's perspective resonate with your experiences or observations? Have you ever noticed these unconscious patterns playing out in your own life or in the lives of people around you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on why forbidden attraction holds such power over the human psyche. If you found this exploration of Jungian psychology insightful, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden forces that shape our desires, relationships, and behaviors. Understanding the unconscious isn't just about solving mysteries. It's about rewriting the stories we tell ourselves. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next discussion, where we'll keep unraveling the complexities of the mind with Jung's wisdom as our guide. Remember, the most fascinating journey isn't the one that leads outward, but the one that turns inward. See you in the comments, and in the next video.